Hey, what's going on? It's 5D Transformations. So I wanted to talk about extroverted thinking versus introverted thinking. These are two different forms of thinking. They both are on the thinking axle. One is a more yang form of thinking. One is a more yin form of thinking. And so when we separate it, the yang or extroverted aspect is going to be the extroverted thinking. The more yin introverted aspect is going to be introverted thinking. So everybody is thinking, regardless. If you're a feeling dominant person, thinking dominant person, everybody's still thinking. And a big thing to look at is with introverted thinking and extroverted thinking, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So introverted thinking is going to be more of your linear thoughts. It's going to be the first thought that comes to you. It's going to be based on what's best next, what fits next, and the immediacy, and then extroverted thinking is going to be the second thought. It's going to be the follow-up thought or the counter thought. So for example, let's say you want to get something to drink, like I'm going to drink a Sprite. Introverted thinking pops up Sprite, I'm going to drink a Sprite. Extroverted thinking is going to be, okay, somebody says, I want to get a Sprite. Extroverted thinking is going to be like, where should I get a Sprite? Or what kind of Sprite do I want? Now it's a counter. It's like an extra part that you have to now think about. That's kind of a smaller example, but if you look at it, that's pretty much what's going on. When you depend more on your introversion and more on your introverted thinking, or your introverted part of thinking, it's going to be more so you relying on your thoughts, what comes naturally in your mind. That first thought you can trust on a stronger level because it's coming from you. It's not filtered. It's not dependent from the outside. It's not manipulated. It's the pure thoughts, the honest truth. That's coming directly from the subconscious mind or the unconscious mind into the conscious. Boom. Extroverted thinking is more of a feedback. It feeds off of the initial thought. So as an extroverted thinker, you're still gonna have thoughts, but because it's paired with introverted feeling, generally the thoughts that you go to are gonna be, observations. They're going to be things that are more objectively based. It's not going to be an inner thought that's driving you. It's going to be more so a thought that's coming to you, like it's bouncing to you versus you bouncing the thought outward. Now there are some people with extroverted thinking dominant that are very vocal when it comes to their thoughts, but to get a little bit deeper, extroverted thinking and introverted thinking is a linear pathway to truth. It's this makes sense now, and then this connects with this, which connects with this, and that's how we get to the truth. Extroverted thinking, on the other hand, so when we look at that, we can call that, what do you call it? Logic. That's logic. It's linear. They both have that, that L to start off with, but that logic, it essentially goes from this connect, A plus B equals C. Extroverted thinking is more rationality. It's more so creating ratios. So it would say, okay, this amount of people think this amount of people think that. Let's find the ultimate truth. It's an efficient way to get to truth for them because it doesn't require them to generate their own thought. As an extroverted thinker, you don't have as much trust when it comes to your own individual thought, because to you, it's like, this is just my one thought. What's my one thought versus the thoughts of the collective? So then you look to gather as much information from everyone's individual thought, and then you are able to come up with these ratios of what the truth is. An extroverted thinker will be someone to say, these amount of people say this, these amount of people say this. But at the end of the day, rationally, like overall, here's what's going on. An introverted thinker doesn't really care to hear all of that because it's like, I don't necessarily care the most about everybody's thoughts because that dilutes the integrity of my individual thought, which then creates a situation where it doesn't feel pure. Their pure thought and pure expression, the more they trust it, the more powerful it becomes. As an extroverted thinker, a lot of the time, you're not really worried about what you think. You know, you're more so worried about what the other person thinks and how that affects you and how that makes you feel. Because as an extroverted thinker, for every thinking function is paired with feeling. So extroverted thinkers have introverted feeling. So as an introverted feeler, that's what you're hanging on to, is your linear feelings, and you want to make sure that everything is logical and rational so that you feel good internally. So a lot of it is what you think, but also managing the thoughts of the people around you. It's much more of a thought management structure, you know. Introverted thinking can care less about managing external thoughts. It more so wants to bring more fuel around the one thought. It's more of a singular thought. Another example is, let's say somebody, the reason why introverted thinkers are so good at building and stuff like that is it's hyper aware. You know, it's getting the most out of its environment so that it knows what to do next. You know, the more aware it is, the more better decision making it can do moment to moment. Whereas so with that, you know, it's really hanging on to that thought and really trying to fuel it. Whereas for extroverted thinking, it doesn't value thoughts that intently, meaning it could have one thought and then toss that one away and take on a new thought, because it values figuring out the best thought. Introverted thinking is going to more so value, you know, being logical and making sure that all of its thinking is going through a certain system where it's bringing forth a certain truth for them. It's more of they want more consistency with their thinking. So you can bring them an idea that makes perfect sense, but they might not be as receptive to it because they want to follow a logical path that they're familiar with and that they, have familiarity and consistency with, so they can build on it. You have to really bring something good for them to really take on, a new thought, you know. And it has the capacity to do it. You just have to realize it's going to take time. Just like how introverted feeling takes time to adapt to different feelings. Whereas people who have introverted thinking, they care so much about their thoughts, you know, and following a certain logical pattern with how they think, and being very critical of thoughts as they come in. You know, extroverted thinkers are more so going to be accepting of a lot of ideas and figuring out what's the best. Introverted thinking is going to want to chop out outside thoughts so that it doesn't dilute what it's thinking, right? So, you know, it's just a different style, you know. So with, you know, introverted thinking, essentially is going to be following a more congruent, linear structure in terms of how it's thinking. And the reason why it's so good at building and things like that is because it's able to, it gets a rush from being able to piece things together and build it up. You know, it's something that it's good at. Extroverted thinking more so, there's going to be a lot of scattered parts that it's putting together. It takes patience to really tap into introverted thinking. It's a very patient function. And introverted thinkers, as I was going to say, they have extroverted feeling. So introverted thinkers are going to hang on to their thoughts, but at the same time, when it comes to considering how people feel and going with the flow and vibing, they'll be very free. Whereas an introverted feeler, you know, extroverted thinking, they love to take in other people's thoughts, but when it comes to how they feel, they might move more slowly. They're not going to be the most outgoing people, the most go with the flow people. You know, you have certain types, ESFPs, ENFPs, they can go with the flow, but it's really because of that, their intuition and sensing for those types that really engage them with the group. Their feeling is still like, they always kind of hold a piece of themselves and it slowly reveals over time. So introverted feeling is going to want to really slowly reveal its feelings, and it really values the consistency and purity of feeling. Introverted thinking is going to really value the purity of thought. It is very logical. Extroverted thinking is very rational. They're paired with two different forms of feeling. Introverted thinking is paired with extroverted feeling, which means, you know, it's going to go with the collective when it comes to how the collective feels. You know, it has the ability to have groupthink because, you know, it's going to think for itself, but at the same time, introverted thinking is going to pick up and build on the information that it's presented with. It's not necessarily going to seek out of the box information unless you have some ENTP, INTP types that crush it and go out the box. But outside of those types, it generally wants to follow familiar patterns that it can solve that have logical steps. Extroverted thinking is more so going to branch out and try to and kind of veer away from just, you know, what it's thinking about now. It's very much a jumpy type of thing. And the last thing I'll give you an example of before I end this is just to give you an idea of how they work. If you look at it like the flower of life, let me see if I can turn this around. Oh well, let me see if I can get this. Okay, so if you look at, all right, imagine this isn't the flower of life, but just to give you an example. All right, so if you look at this paper, okay, I'll try to see if I can get this. Introverted thinking is going like this, and it's creating a map and a step. As you can see, it's just going linear to get to, let's say this is truth, right? So along the way, it might make mistakes. It might go this way, up, this doesn't work, so I'm gonna just go this way, and then it goes straight. And it's finding a way linearly to truth, but until it gets there, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna be not at the truth yet. So it's trying to get there. Extroverted thinking, on the other hand, you know, is gonna be more, what about this idea? What about this idea? What about that idea? What about that idea? What about this idea? What about here? It might go back here, then it might go up here. And then right here, it's going to get to truth as well. So they both are going to get the truth, but look, one had a pattern going straight. The other one looked more like this, you know. It'll jump around, you know. It will say, while one person's going toward solving crime, they'll say, okay, in order to solve crime, we just lock up all of the criminals. An extroverted thinker might say, well, you know, how are we going to know that everybody's a criminal? Well, introverted thinker's going to say if they commit a crime. Extroverted thinker might be like, well, what is considered a crime? You know what I mean? Introverted thinker is going to be starting to get frustrated, like, okay, let's, you know what I mean? Like, and this is just an idea, you know, this doesn't describe everybody, but one is they're both trying to get to the truth. One is just explaining like the simple truths that are here in the moment, and the other one is picking up off of that and is building on it. And one is more comfortable doing the first style, another one's more comfortable doing the second style. Now this is kind of a construct. In the next video, this is a part one. In the part two, I'm gonna really start going deeper and explaining the web and unweaving the web so that people can get a good idea, because it goes deep when you start to get into that introverted thinking, man. Introverted thinking is no joke. It's really quick. It solves. It thinks. It likes to move forward. It likes to move forward. It likes to stand on its own. It's very solid. It's very strong. Extroverted thinking is very powerful and profound and creative. But introverted think they're both very powerful. So we're gonna go into part two soon. Hope you enjoy. We got a lot of MBTI on the way. Talk to you soon. Peace.